Imagine driving alone through a forest in New Mexico. No houses, no traffic, no people, just thousands of acres of wilderness surrounding you. Then, without warning, you realize something is wrong. Your GPS stops working. Your phone has no signal. And when you look behind you, there's someone standing between the trees. You turn around for just a second. When you look again, they're gone. Now imagine walking toward your car, only to realize that your own footprints have suddenly stopped. No footprints leading away. No signs of a struggle. Nothing. You have simply disappeared. This is the mystery surrounding a remote region of New Mexico, known as the POS Triangle. For more than 4 decades, people have vanished from this enormous wilderness. Some were eventually found. Many were not. And in several cases, even the evidence left behind seems almost impossible to explain. Tonight, we're going deep into the POS Triangle. And we're starting with one of its most disturbing disappearances. It was the final day of the year 2000. A nurse named Carmen Gonzalez was working at a medical center on the Zuni Indian Reservation in New Mexico. With New Year's Eve approaching, Carmen decided to travel to Santa Fe. She contacted her family back in Puerto Rico and told them about her plans. Everything seemed completely normal. On the morning of December 31st, Carmen rented a Ford Windstar van and began the 4-hour journey toward Santa Fe. Later that day, she arrived in the city and checked into a motel. She parked the rental van outside. Nothing about her behavior seemed unusual. She was alone. She appeared calm. And she had every intention of returning to work after the holiday. But the following afternoon, Carmen never checked out. The motel staff tried contacting her. There was no answer. Eventually, they entered the room. Her belongings were still there. Clothes, toiletries, personal items. Nothing suggested that she had packed up and left. There was no obvious sign of a struggle either. It looked almost as though Carmen had simply stepped outside and never came back. But there was another problem. Her rental van was gone. Police launched a missing person investigation. Days passed. Then weeks. There was still no sign of Carmen until nearly a month later. A cross-country skier traveling through the remote Sangre de Cristo Mountains discovered something at the bottom of a canyon. It was Carmen's missing van. The vehicle was buried beneath snow. But investigators noticed something strange. There were no obvious tire tracks leading to the location, and there were no footprints around the vehicle. Nothing suggested anyone had recently approached the van or walked away from it. Police searched the vehicle. Carmen wasn't inside. Neither were her personal belongings. Investigators then brought in tracking dogs. The dogs were given Carmen's clothing. They circled the vehicle. They picked up her scent. Then they moved deeper into the canyon. And suddenly, they stopped. The dogs became confused. They sniffed the air. Their handlers tried encouraging them forward, but they refused. Whatever trail Carmen had left behind, it simply ended. Carmen Gonzalez was never found. 2 years before Carmen disappeared, another woman vanished in the same region. Her name was Emma Tresp. Emma was 71 years old and deeply religious. She had become a nun and planned to travel from Oklahoma to a religious retreat in New Mexico. She had visited the monastery before. She knew the route. She knew the area. And on August 31st, she left her daughter's home in a 1997 Honda Civic. She was expected to arrive later that day. But several days passed. Emma never contacted her family. Her daughter eventually called the monastery. They told her something terrifying. Emma had never arrived. Authorities began tracing her route. Investigators discovered that Emma had stopped for fuel in Santa Rosa. After that, nothing. 2 weeks later, police found her Honda Civic deep inside the Santa Fe National Forest. The car was stuck on a remote service road, and once again, her belongings were still inside. But investigators noticed something unusual around the vehicle. There were footprints in the mud. The tracks showed that Emma had stepped out of the driver's side. She had walked around the car. It looked as though she had inspected the vehicle after it became stuck. But then, the footprints ended. There were no tracks leading into the forest, no tracks toward the road, no indication that she had gone searching for help. Nothing. It was almost as though Emma had taken a few steps away from her vehicle and simply vanished. She was never found. In September 2009, a hunting party entered the POS wilderness. Among them was a 61-year-old man named Melvin Nadal. Nadal wasn't inexperienced. He was physically fit. He owned a gym. He practiced taekwondo. And he knew the wilderness well. In fact, after becoming temporarily lost during an earlier hunting trip, he had taken extra precautions. He purchased a GPS tracking device. He planned to stay near his hunting group, and he promised himself he wouldn't wander off alone. But on the morning of September 6th, he suddenly changed his mind. Nadal told the others he wanted to go hunting alone. He carried a rifle and a tactical bow. Then he disappeared into the forest. He promised to return before nightfall. But night came. Nadal didn't return. His friends immediately became worried. Police arrived with tracking dogs. At first, the search seemed promising. The dogs picked up his scent. Investigators found his footprints. Everything suggested Nadal had followed the expected trail. Then, about 50 yards beyond the point where his companions had last seen him, the trail ended. The dog became agitated. It refused to move forward. Handlers tried repeatedly to encourage it. Nothing worked. And Nadal's footprints? They stopped too. There were no signs of a struggle. No tracks leading away. No evidence that he had turned around. Search teams brought in helicopters, mounted units, and additional dogs. But Melvin Nadal was never found. Not his body. Not his weapons. Not his equipment. Nothing. It was as if the forest had swallowed him. Perhaps the strangest case happened in 2017. His name was Stanley Vigil. Unlike many of the missing people connected to the POS Triangle, Stanley wasn't unfamiliar with the area. He had been born and raised there. He had spent much of his life hunting and exploring those forests. He was 50 years old, a father of 4, and an experienced outdoorsman. On November 7th, Stanley went deer hunting with family members and friends. They were traveling in a 4x4 when Stanley suddenly claimed he saw an animal running through the trees. Before the vehicle had even completely stopped, Stanley jumped out. He grabbed his rifle and ran after it. The others eventually followed. For several minutes, they searched the trail. Then, 2 gunshots. The group assumed Stanley had found his target. They waited, but Stanley didn't return. Minutes passed. The forest became silent. Someone fired a rifle into the air to signal their location. After a short delay, another gunshot echoed back. But this one sounded much farther away. Stanley wasn't coming toward them. He was moving deeper into the wilderness. Then a sudden storm arrived. Heavy rain. Poor visibility. The group returned to their vehicle and continued trying to signal him, but there was no response. Stanley was officially reported missing. Search teams spent days looking for him. Helicopters searched from above. Thermal imaging was used. Dogs searched the forest. Nothing. Then investigators received a possible lead. A trail camera at Diamond Ranch appeared to capture a blurry figure resembling Stanley. He seemed to be moving quickly. And strangely, he no longer had his rifle. The following night, another report came in. A man matching Stanley's description had reportedly appeared at a mobile home. He was terrified. He begged the woman inside to let him in. She noticed he was carrying a handgun and refused. According to her account, Stanley shouted something chilling. "Someone is chasing me." Then he disappeared into the darkness. 6 months later, a sheriff's deputy fishing in the San Juan River discovered Stanley's body. The autopsy revealed severe injuries to his head and ribcage. But what happened during those missing hours? Why was Stanley running? Who or what was he running from? No one knows. Stanley wasn't the only person to disappear. In 1997, a 19-year-old named Robert Amos Browning was reported missing. He had been living out of his van in the Pecos area. Eventually, his vehicle was found abandoned near Monastery Lake. The windows were down. There was still fuel in the tank, and inside were his identification, money, and fishing equipment. Nothing suggested robbery. Nothing explained why Robert would simply leave everything behind. And there was another disturbing detail. The location where his van was found was only a few miles from the area where Emma Tresp's vehicle would later be discovered. Robert himself was never found. Then there was Audrey Kaplan. In 2014, Audrey was camping with companions. At one point, she noticed mushrooms growing nearby. She briefly left the group to collect them. She never came back. Search teams immediately began looking for her. But almost as soon as the search began, a dense fog rolled into the area. Visibility dropped dramatically. The search became extremely difficult. A week later, investigators finally found Audrey's body. She was partially submerged in the Pecos River. The circumstances surrounding her death were deeply unusual. And once again, questions remained. Was it simply an accident? Did the environment overwhelm her? Or was something else happening in this strange region? There are rational explanations. The wilderness of northern New Mexico is brutal. Weather can change quickly. Fog can appear without warning. Rain can turn trails into dangerous terrain. Cold temperatures can cause hypothermia. Exhaustion can cause confusion. And even experienced hikers can become disoriented. These explanations could account for some disappearances, but they don't explain everything. Why do some trails suddenly stop? Why are abandoned vehicles sometimes discovered with belongings still inside? Why do tracking dogs occasionally appear to lose a scent completely? And why have so many people disappeared from this particular region? Some people believe criminal organizations could be responsible. The area is enormous and isolated. Others believe the disappearances may be connected to something paranormal. Locals have reported seeing strange, shadow-like figures between the trees. Some describe dark figures with glowing eyes. Others claim they have seen shapes moving through the forest, always keeping just beyond the reach of their flashlights. And then there are even stranger theories. Some people have suggested extraterrestrial activity. Others believe there could be temporary disturbances between dimensions. Some investigators have even reported unusual electromagnetic readings in certain parts of the region. But none of these theories have been proven. And that's what makes the POS Triangle so unsettling. Maybe there is a simple explanation. Maybe these people became lost. Maybe the weather turned against them. Maybe accidents and human mistakes created mysteries that became larger with time. But then again, how do you explain a trail that simply ends? How do you explain a vehicle sitting alone in the middle of nowhere, with the owner completely gone? And how do you explain a person like Stanley Vigil running through the darkness while desperately telling someone that he was being chased? Perhaps one day, someone will finally uncover the truth. Until then, the forests of New Mexico remain silent. Thousands of acres of wilderness, countless unanswered questions, and somewhere beneath those trees, the missing may still be waiting to be found. Because in the POS Triangle, sometimes the most frightening thing isn't what you see in the forest, it's what you never see at all.